When the bottom falls out, the long-term damage of today's temporary economic crises, it always starts as a whisper. Budget cuts, temporary furloughs, streamlining. But when you're already living close to the edge, trying to rebuild after incarceration, survive as a sex worker under criminalization, or care for your family in the aftermath of trauma, those whispers become hurricanes. And now they're getting louder. Mass layoffs are sweeping through sectors most folks never imagined would be touched. The National Park Service, the National Weather Service, the arts, the FAA, and more. These aren't just bureaucracies or background institutions. They're the scaffolding that holds up daily life. When they crumble, they don't fall in isolation. They take entire communities with them. Let's start with the National Park Service. Earlier this year, Yellowstone and Grand Canyon National Parks announced staffing reductions and partial seasonal closures due to budget shortfalls and federal hiring freezes. The economic ripple effect was immediate. Local towns that depend on tourism lost business, and park maintenance crews, many of whom are veterans or formerly incarcerated individuals in transitional employment programs, were let go. These aren't just job cuts. They're lost opportunities for reentry, dignity, and stability. And as trails erode and infrastructure collapses under a $23 billion maintenance backlog, access to safe public green space shrinks, hitting poor families, tribal communities, and urban youth the hardest. Then there's the National Weather Service, quietly stretched past the breaking point. In June, NOAA publicly acknowledged it was operating with hundreds of meteorologist vacancies, prompting calls from Congress for emergency hiring measures. The stakes are brutally real. Deadly tornadoes struck communities across Oklahoma and Iowa this spring, and storm alerts were delayed or under-communicated due to staffing shortages and aging radar systems. In a warming world, a missed alert isn't an inconvenience, it's a death sentence. Unhoused people, rural residents, and sex workers who rely on accurate weather to plan for outdoor work or shelter are left exposed and unprotected. Meanwhile, the arts are being gutted again. In May, New York City announced a 15% cut to its Department of Cultural Affairs, resulting in slashed funding for community arts programs, museums, and public schools. Across the country, entire nonprofit theaters and galleries are closing their doors permanently. This isn't just a cultural loss, it's an economic one. The arts sector represents over $1 trillion in U.S. GDP and supports more than 5 million jobs. When arts funding disappears, so do community jobs, youth programs, and spaces for healing and protest. For BIPOC artists, incarcerated creatives, and low-income students, these closures sever vital lifelines of expression and empowerment. Over in the skies, the Federal Aviation Administration is facing its own crisis. In March, the FAA's top safety official told Congress the agency was facing an unprecedented staffing shortage with more than 3,000 air traffic controller vacancies and an aging workforce. The result? A surge in near-miss incidents, major delays, and rising flight costs. Airlines are trimming schedules and jacking up prices, disproportionately impacting gig workers, low-income families, and people who rely on regional airports, particularly in rural and underserved areas. And the list doesn't stop there. Cuts to the USDA have delayed SNAP benefit expansions at a time when food insecurity is skyrocketing. Public health departments have scaled back HIV testing and mental health services, leaving criminalized communities with nowhere to turn. Public transit systems, from Philadelphia to Oakland, have reduced service and raised fares due to budget gaps, making it harder for sex workers and working-class residents to access essential services and safer spaces. These aren't isolated failures. They're a cascade of collapses. When we lose funding for essential public services, we lose more than jobs. We lose the warning systems that save lives. We lose the parks that offer healing and purpose. We lose the art that helps us remember who we are. We lose the infrastructure that gives people a second chance. And for sex workers and survivors, the consequences cut even deeper. No weather alerts means no chance to avoid a deadly storm. No park jobs mean fewer reentry opportunities and fewer pathways out of criminalized labor. No community arts means fewer chances to share our stories, build power, or recover from trauma. When public sector jobs disappear, many are pushed into underground economies just to survive, economies that law enforcement loves to criminalize but refuses to support. These aren't just budget cuts, these are wounds that won't heal. We've been here before. The 2008 financial crash gutted public services, and most of them never came back. Now, with inflation used as an excuse for austerity, we're watching the same playbook unfold, and it's the same people getting sacrificed. Every so-called temporary cut builds permanent instability. One missed paycheck can spiral into eviction. One missed storm warning can end a life. One lost reentry job can send someone back to prison. Grassroots organizations like ours are left holding the pieces with duct tape and community grit. But burnout is real, and hope alone doesn't fund public infrastructure. When we accept this as just a phase, we're agreeing to let critical lifelines vanish, jobs that reduce recidivism, platforms for survivors to heal, early warning systems that protect the most vulnerable. And guess who's always asked to clean it up? The same people abandoned by the system to begin with: sex workers, system survivors, queer and trans folks, poor women of color, undocumented people, and the criminalized. This isn't about pink slips. It's about the kind of world we're choosing to build or bulldoze. Here's what we're demanding. Stop pretending survival programs are non-essential. Fund public job pipelines that include justice-impacted people. Invest in sex worker and survivor-led organizations that are already doing the work. Decriminalize sex work so people can survive without fear of arrest or surveillance. And if you can help, do it. Donate, volunteer, amplify, advocate. Because we're not just losing government jobs, we're losing safety, resilience, connection, and culture. This is no longer about austerity, it's about erasure. And if this is what temporary looks like, we shudder to imagine what permanent will feel like. But here's the thing. We've never waited for rescue. We've always built our own. Join us, because surviving shouldn't come with a punishment, and thriving shouldn't be a privilege.